So, thinking about mindfulness and thriving, by the way, I'm Stuart McDonald, thinking about mindfulness and thriving and squeaky chairs, I hope you don't mind my squeaky chair. When I think about mindfulness and thriving, there's another thing. In my previous post, I talked about mindfulness as a mindset, this social cognitive mindfulness that Alan Langer came up with and that other people have kind of expanded on. But I also talked about mindfulness as a contemplative process, but I didn't expand on what that looks like. And there are many different bits to mindfulness. And I've got a tiny little course on mindfulness that I'm working on at the moment to try and get out there that people can just do 4 or 5 sessions and learn about it. Because I find there's a lot of grey areas and misinformation. Lots of people use the word mindfulness and they don't really mean mindfulness. As I said previously, the contemplative aspect of mindfulness seems to be owned largely by a Buddhist and particularly a Zen Buddhist kind of approach, and there's a lot of great benefit to that. Did you know, though, that mindfulness has been around for a long time in other traditions? For example, the Christian tradition, the Eastern Orthodox tradition, they have a form of mindfulness that's called watchfulness. And watchfulness has been around for almost as long as Christianity has as part of the process. And I haven't looked into it in other places like Judaism and the like, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if there are similar processes in there. I'll have to look into that a bit more. But as far as a Christian thing goes, this process of watchfulness is really summed up really well in the book Christ the Eternal Tao by Ahira Damascene, or did I get that wrong? And there's other places, like if you go, you can read and learn about it if you go through places like the Philokalia and other ancient writings. You can go right back and read about it way back in the 3rd and 4th century. There's a whole bunch of really cool stuff. It relates to, there's also influences from Stoicism and other writings from the Greek philosophers with this mindful attitude. It really isn't the domain of one particular place or one particular thought or one particular way of being. The thing I want to bring out about mindfulness now and what watchfulness promotes, particularly in the Christian context, is really, really interesting. So watchfulness, I think, sums up one of the parts of mindfulness really well. When we say mindfulness, a lot of people say, yes, you've got to pay attention, you've got to be aware of what you're doing, and then they cease being mindful. But watchfulness is a little bit different. And watchfulness is the doorway, it's the gateway into a discipline of mindfulness. Because with watchfulness, what you're doing is you're going up, one of the ancient writers calls it into the watchtower of your soul, the watchtower of your mind. You're going up into the watchtower of your mind and you're watching your thoughts, you're watching your feelings, you're observing them. And you don't have to do that for half an hour. You can do that for 30 seconds. You can put a timer on and you can just observe them coming and going for 30 seconds, for 2 minutes, and that can feel like an eternity. And when you have the timer on, then you know that you can survive. Because you just keep coming back to the process. Because here's the other thing about watchfulness and mindfulness. It's not a thing that you do perfectly. You see, the human body and mind is not designed to focus on one thing all the time forever. In fact, we are created, we are geared and wired in such a way that we seek novelty. The brain is after novelty. When something moves, it wants to look at it. When there's a new sound, it listens to it. Now that's really important, because if you're walking through a forest and it's dense green and browns and that's all you can see, but there's a predator coming, you want to be aware of its movement and aware of the different sound of that predator, and so you become alert to it. It's really, really healthy. So this sense of being distracted is a very human thing to do. It's really common for people to torment and berate themselves because they get distracted a lot, or to feel that, or for other people to say you're so distractible. It's actually a human thing. It's quite normal, and it's quite okay to be that way. The thing is that focusing your attention on something is also a normal human thing. It's not that we have to have one or the other, it's that we need both of them. And they are both things that we can refine as skills. So mindfulness refines the skill of watching the changes in attention. As images come and go into your mind, there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to get into about imagery and what that is inside our brain and our body. But as images come and go in our mind and they rise and fall and thoughts come and go and we start creating stories and almost having waking dreams in our mind and pictures and sounds and thoughts, if we've got that timer on and we know that we're trying to be mindful for 60 seconds, then all we do is we just breathe in, come back up into the watchtower of our mind and watch those thoughts rising and falling. And then we get distracted by them, and we come back up into the watchtower of our mind when we become aware of it, and we watch them. Mindfulness is the process of having all of those thoughts and images and things, and observing the fact that you're having them without judging yourself for having them, and without putting a value judgment on those thoughts themselves. That's all that mindfulness and watchfulness is, at a most basic level. And so if you don't have the desire to move and the desire to think and lots of thoughts bubbling inside your brain, how can you be mindful? You have to have that in order to practice mindfulness. It's really important. And it's absolutely okay for your brain to fizz and fuzz and bop all over the place. Another thing about mindfulness is when you're mindful, your goal isn't to be calm. Your goal isn't to control your thinking or to still your mind. Your goal is to simply be mindful. But that's a thought for another day.